The American prison system is one of the largest in the world, housing over 2 million people. On paper, it claims to uphold justice. But beneath that surface lies a reality of overcrowding, underfunding, racial disparity, and policies that often criminalize poverty more than crime itself. In this vast machinery of punishment, individuals disappear. Names become numbers. Justice becomes a distant ideal. This is the story of Marcus Greene. Marcus wasn't a lawyer. He wasn't a politician or a man with connections. He was just another young black man from the wrong side of Cleveland, Ohio. At 19, he was arrested for a robbery he swore he didn't commit. The evidence? Thin. A mismatched witness statement, a public defender who had 63 other cases that month, and a system that preferred a quick conviction over a thorough trial. Within 6 months, Marcus was convicted and sentenced to 23 years. That's where his life, as he knew it, ended. But it's also where something else began. Marcus entered Iron Ridge Correctional Facility in 2009, a concrete fortress designed to break spirits more than rehabilitate lives. Days blended together, lights flicked on at 5 a.m., showers were cold, meals were barely edible, violence was common, hope was rare, and yet even as his world collapsed around him, Marcus couldn't let go of one question. What if I don't belong here? He wasn't alone in asking that. In every cell block, in every tier, men whispered similar stories of rushed trials, coerced confessions, planted evidence, bad representation. Marcus listened. He asked questions. He read case law. He read it again and again. Every night after lockdown, by the dim light from his bunk, he studied. First out of desperation, then out of obsession. He taught himself how to file motions, learned the difference between a writ and an appeal, discovered how constitutional violations could be buried under a pile of ignored paperwork. He began helping other inmates draft their legal documents. It earned him the nickname Jailhouse Lawyer. But still, his own appeal sat in limbo. Rejected once, then twice. Time passed. He lost touch with friends. His mother died before he could see her again. And yet, he refused to stop fighting. That's when he met Rico, a fellow inmate convicted on a federal charge, facing 30 years. Rico had been studying too, but needed help understanding a complex statute. Marcus dove into it, and what he found shocked them both. Rico's charge had been misclassified. A technicality, but a powerful one. Together, they rewrote his motion from scratch. It worked. Rico's sentence was cut in half. He walked free 7 months later. Before leaving, he turned to Marcus and said, "You're not just smart, you're dangerous. To the right people." That moment changed everything. For Marcus, it was no longer just about his own case. It was about something bigger. A system that had been built to silence people like him, and how he could learn to speak its language better than the people who ran it. So the question remains, how did a lowly prisoner beat this system? The answer begins right here. After Rico's release, word about Marcus spread quickly through the prison. Men who had once seen him as just another inmate now saw him as something else, a lifeline. They came with paperwork, transcripts, sentencing memos, hoping Marcus could see something they'd missed. He read every line. Sometimes there was nothing he could do. But other times, the flaws jumped out. Errors in procedure, missing disclosures, Sixth Amendment violations. Slowly, Marcus began building a reputation as someone who could navigate the legal maze better than most appointed attorneys. Iron Ridge had a small legal library, outdated books, a single computer with no internet access. But Marcus made it work. He used every tool he had, typed on broken typewriters, scribbled notes in the margins of legal digests, handwrote motions line by line. What he lacked in resources, he made up for in obsession. By 2013, Marcus had filed successful motions for 3 other inmates. One got a new hearing, another had his sentence reduced, the third had a wrongful conviction overturned after 7 years. These weren't miracles, they were battles, fought with precision, patience, and deep legal knowledge. But Marcus knew something more powerful than law was growing inside those prison walls. belief. Still, his own case haunted him. His trial had been rushed, his alibi ignored. A fingerprint analysis that could have cleared him had never been submitted by his overworked public defender. And yet, each of his appeals had been denied, on technicalities, not merit. That was the cruel irony of the American legal system. Being right wasn't always enough. But Marcus didn't give up. He changed tactics. Instead of appealing the conviction directly, he filed for access to previously sealed evidence, arguing that it violated his right to a fair trial. The motion was complex, built on obscure precedents he'd uncovered after months of research. This time, something shifted. In 2015, a judge granted limited discovery. Marcus was allowed to review parts of the original investigation. What he found stunned him. A key witness had recanted his testimony 2 years after the trial. The statement had been quietly added to the file and ignored. With that, Marcus filed for a post-conviction evidentiary hearing. It was his first real shot. But the system doesn't like admitting it's wrong. The state fought back, arguing the witness's recantation was unreliable. The hearing was delayed for nearly a year. During that time, Marcus continued helping others because he understood something few did. His power didn't come from winning. It came from knowing how to keep playing long after others quit. Finally, in 2016, Marcus stood in court again. Shackled, hands cuffed. But this time he wasn't silent. He spoke for himself, presenting the flaws, inconsistencies, and omissions. Calm, precise, unrelenting. The judge didn't issue a ruling that day. It took 4 more months. Then the letter came. The conviction would be reviewed, not overturned, not yet, but reviewed. It was the first crack in the wall. And Marcus knew. Cracks can grow. The review of Marcus Greene's conviction triggered a quiet buzz throughout Iron Ridge Correctional. It wasn't just news, it was hope. If Marcus could get the system to blink, maybe others could too. But Marcus wasn't celebrating. He knew the system didn't collapse from a single ruling. It creaked, it stalled, it threatened to snap back harder. And so he got to work, not just on his case, but on building something bigger. He started a study group. 5 men met every week in the prison chapel, law books in hand, notes tucked in the folds of Bibles and magazines. They called themselves the Freedom Unit. What started as case review sessions became something more. Legal education for the incarcerated. They helped each other draft filings, decode legal jargon, and challenge unconstitutional practices. For men who'd been told they were nothing more than criminals, the Freedom Unit was rebellion with a pen. Marcus taught them how to read beyond the words. The law isn't just what's written, he told them. It's how it's applied, and how it's denied. By 2017, Marcus had helped file 7 successful motions, 3 of which led to sentence reductions or retrials. None of the men were rich, none had private lawyers, but they had something stronger, knowledge. Meanwhile, his own case moved slowly through the courts. The review board requested transcripts, re-examined forensic evidence, and conducted interviews with former witnesses. Still, months turned into years. Marcus waited, teaching during the day, researching by night. Then came a breakthrough. A journalist from a regional paper had been investigating wrongful convictions and came across Marcus's hearing records. She requested an interview. After weeks of legal back and forth with prison officials, it was approved. The journalist, Lena Ward, met Marcus in a cold, windowless room. She expected another bitter man with a sob story. Instead, she found someone sharp, composed, and brutally honest. "They didn't just take my time," he told her. "They rewrote who I was, and now I'm rewriting it back." The article ran under the title, "The Prison Lawyer They Couldn't Silence." It went viral. Civil rights groups took notice. A law school dean reached out, offering students to assist with his filings. Former inmates Marcus had helped began writing letters to judges, attesting to his integrity and impact. Pressure grew. And finally, in late 2018, nearly a decade after his incarceration, Marcus received an order. A new trial would be granted. The court acknowledged the witness recantation, the missing forensic review, and the systemic failures in his original defense. Marcus didn't smile. He didn't cry. He just folded the order, placed it gently in a folder marked Freedom, and returned to his cell in silence. The fight wasn't over. The retrial would be brutal. The state wasn't going to concede easily. But the ground was shifting. For the first time, the system was on defense. And Marcus Greene? He was just getting started. The courtroom felt colder the second time. Marcus stood before the judge again, 9 years older, 9 years wiser, and no longer alone. Behind him sat students, former inmates, advocates, journalists. Lena Ward was there again, notebook in hand. He wore the same prison-issued beige uniform, but this time the chains didn't rattle the same. This time they seemed temporary. The prosecution hadn't changed much. The same office, same tone. But their case had cracks, witnesses who had recanted, evidence that had aged poorly under scrutiny, and a defendant who now spoke like a seasoned attorney. Marcus had chosen not to accept a plea deal, despite being offered one, time served in exchange for a guilty admission. It was tempting. He could have walked out that day, but he said no. I'd rather do 5 more years as an innocent man than go free with a lie on my name. The retrial began. Marcus's new legal team, 2 attorneys from a non-profit justice initiative, presented a much stronger defense. They showed how his original trial was rushed, how key exculpatory evidence had been buried, and how the eyewitness misidentification had been riddled with inconsistencies from the start. Most powerful of all was Marcus's own testimony. He stood before the jury, not as a man begging for mercy, but as someone laying bare the truth. He talked about the night of his arrest, the holes in the case, the years he spent teaching himself the law just to survive. He didn't ask for sympathy, he demanded justice. I've already served a sentence, he told them. Now I'm asking you to serve the truth. The trial lasted 2 weeks, and then came the verdict. The courtroom was silent. The judge read the words that Marcus had waited 9 years to hear. Not guilty, no cheers, no gasps, just a heavy, breathless pause, followed by the sound of Marcus's deep inhale, like coming up for air after nearly drowning. But freedom isn't immediate. Even after the acquittal, it took another 2 months of paperwork, reviews, and clearance procedures before Marcus was officially released. On a rainy Tuesday morning in March 2019, he walked out of Iron Ridge for the last time. He carried a small duffel bag, a worn copy of the United States Constitution, and a folder labeled Casework. Open. He didn't look back. Marcus didn't head straight for home. There wasn't much of it left. His mother had passed. Friends had scattered. Instead, he went to the office of the Justice Initiative that had helped free him. He walked in and said, I want to work, not just on mine, on the others. They didn't hesitate. Within a month, Marcus was consulting on wrongful conviction cases. Within a year, he had co-founded Break the Bars, a legal aid program designed to empower incarcerated individuals to become their own advocates. He became a speaker, a writer, and, reluctantly, a symbol. People wanted to call him a hero. He always refused. I'm not the story, he said. The system is, and how many it still swallows. But the world knew better. The man who beat the system wasn't just free. He was on a mission. Marcus didn't waste time. Within days of his release, he began organizing. He started where he always had, by listening. Former inmates, public defenders, legal aid workers, grieving families, he asked them all the same question. What went wrong? The answers were endless. Prosecutors hiding evidence, overworked defenders folding under pressure, plea bargains offered with threats instead of choices, judges pressured to keep conviction rates high, police misconduct ignored, and worst of all, the voiceless, the men and women sitting in cells who didn't know how to fight back. Marcus knew he couldn't fix the system alone, but he could give people the tools to fight it. That's how Break the Bars was born. What started as a small program, just Marcus and a few law school interns, grew quickly. They offered legal workshops to inmates through letters and printed guides. They trained former prisoners to become community advocates. They built a network of volunteers who helped incarcerated individuals file their own motions, challenge unfair conditions, and hold public defenders accountable. Marcus insisted the program stay grounded. No expensive conferences, no top-heavy staff. "This isn't charity," he told his team. "This is justice, and justice starts with education." By 2020, Break the Bars had reached over 800 inmates across 4 states. They offered courses in basic legal literacy, prisoner rights, and motion drafting. It wasn't just legal advice, it was empowerment. Marcus also began speaking publicly. At first, he hated it, the attention, the spotlight, the way media tried to make him into a miracle story. He reminded them again and again, "I was one of thousands. I was lucky. Most aren't." But his voice carried weight. He gave keynote addresses at universities, sat on panels about legal reform, appeared on podcasts and TV specials. His story became part of a broader narrative, a warning about a justice system that was too often unjust, and a blueprint for what resistance could look like from the inside out. He used every platform he got to push policy, expanding access to legal libraries in prisons, reforming indigent defense laws, mandating body camera policies, and increasing the statute of limitations for wrongful convictions. He became known for a phrase he used at every event. "You don't fix the system by replacing the gears. You fix it by teaching the machine who it serves." In late 2021, Break the Bars received its first major grant, enough to expand into 8 more correctional facilities. They hired 3 formerly incarcerated men Marcus had mentored, all of whom had studied law with him inside Iron Ridge. When he saw them walk into the office, wearing suits instead of jumpsuits, carrying laptops instead of court denials, Marcus didn't say much. He just nodded. They all understood. Marcus still carried the folder marked Casework, open. It was thicker now, full of names, letters, affidavits, each one a life buried by bureaucracy. He worked through them methodically, just as he had in his cell, except now he had a team, resources, and, finally, freedom. But he knew his real victory wasn't just in beating the system, it was in proving that the system could be outthought, outworked, outlasted. And if he could do it, so could others. Success has a cost, and Marcus knew it was coming. By 2022, Break the Bars had expanded to nearly a dozen states. They were helping thousands of incarcerated people access legal training, file their own motions, and push back against wrongful sentencing. Their impact was undeniable. And that's when the resistance began. First came the administrative barriers. Prisons began denying access to Break the Bars materials, citing security concerns. Legal mail was lost. Letters were delayed for months. Facilities that once allowed educational workshops began pulling back support, quietly pressured by higher-ups who disliked what Marcus represented. Then came the political backlash. Some lawmakers accused the organization of encouraging inmates to clog the courts with frivolous claims. A senator went on television and called Marcus a dangerous example of rewarding criminals with influence. Marcus didn't flinch. He responded the same way he always had, with facts, with clarity, and with a calm intensity that couldn't be denied. "Our courts are flooded," he said in a nationally televised debate, "not because of too many filings, but because of too many mistakes. If the system were just, it wouldn't fear the truth." Despite the growing pressure, support for Marcus only widened. Civil rights groups, public defenders, and former inmates rallied behind him. Universities partnered with Break the Bars to offer legal fellowships. Activists held fundraisers, calling him a modern-day Frederick Douglass with a legal pad. But Marcus remained grounded. He still kept a small apartment. He still walked to work. He still read 2 case files every night before bed. Freedom, he often said, wasn't a destination. It was maintenance. In 2023, Marcus launched the Prison Justice Archive, an online platform to document wrongful convictions and systemic abuses inside correctional facilities. It was part database, part memorial. Every story mattered, every voice counted, and it was open to the public. That same year, he gave a speech at a major legal conference. The crowd was filled with judges, lawyers, law students, and policymakers. He stood at the podium in a black suit, no notes, and spoke for 20 uninterrupted minutes. I was buried by a system designed to forget me, but I clawed my way back, not with anger, but with knowledge. And I'm not the exception. I'm the warning. He paused, looked out at the crowd. And if you're uncomfortable with that truth, maybe it's time to change something. By 2025, Break the Bars had helped reverse or retry over 120 cases. Dozens of men and women were free because of Marcus's efforts. Not through riots or revolutions, but through the painstaking power of paperwork, law, and relentless belief. And Marcus? He never called himself a hero. He called himself lucky. He often visited Iron Ridge Correctional, not as a prisoner now, but as a guest lecturer. He would stand in the same chapel where the Freedom Unit once met and say, "I didn't beat the system, I outlearned it, one page at a time." And maybe that was the real revolution. Not just freedom for himself, but showing others how to build their own, not with fire, but with facts, not with rage, but with resolve, not with a weapon, but with a voice that refused to stay silent. Because in the end, Marcus Greene didn't just escape a broken system, he became its reckoning.